Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in the name of God, the most beneficent, the most merciful. Hassanain Rajab Ali, Michael Corey, Dan Barker, Richard Carrier, respected scholars, distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. Peace be on you. On behalf of the Tawheed Institute of New York City and the Islamic Center of America's Young Muslim Association of Dearborn, Michigan, I welcome you all to part 2 of the historic debate, Does God Not Exist? I thank God for allowing us the opportunity to be here and be amongst each other to hold this debate. I anticipate an intellectual discussion will take place and look forward to seeing everyone's attentiveness to learn. The Tawheed Institute held the first part of this debate last year in New York, where a healthy educational debate between the two different ideologies took place, and at the same time, understanding and civility was maintained. The objective of our gathering today is to provide your mind, if opened, an intelligent academia in which you will be pushed to think about all of the information that you are receiving and reflect on the two different dogmas. We all know the saying, a mind is like a parachute. It works best when opened. I encourage and urge you to take the time right now to put your biases on hold and try to absorb the information as it comes out. The topic being debated tonight is a very sensitive one. We all know that. And it probes into our internal philosophies and addresses questions that we may have reflected on before and drifted over at times, but never truly deeply examined. If you hear something today that you are not used to hearing, pause for a moment, ponder, and reflect. This will be the only way for you to gain anything out of tonight's debate. We are here to gain an understanding of one another. And the Holy Quran states it best, O people, verily we have created you of a male and a female, and have made you into nations and tribes, so that you may know each other. With that, we will begin with the recitation of the Holy Quran by Brother Azhar Nasser.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. ثانية على حب الحسن والحسين. الثالثة بأعلى أصواتكم يرحمكم الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والسماء ذات البروج واليوم الموعود وشاهد ومشهود. قتل أصحاب الأخدود النار ذات الوقود. وهم على ما يفعلون بالمؤمنين شهود. وما نقم منهم إلا أن يؤمنوا بالله العزيز الحميد الذي له ملك السماوات والأرض والله على كل شيء شهيد. إن الذين فتنوا المؤمنين والمؤمنات ثم لم يتوبوا فلهم عذاب جهنم ولهم عذاب الحريق. إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات لهم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار ذلك الفوز الكبير. إن بطش ربك لشديد إنه هو يبدئ ويعيد وهو الغفور الودود ذو العرش المجيد فعال لما يريد. هل أتاك حديث الجنود فرعون وثمود بل الذين كفروا في تكذيب والله من ورائهم محيط بل هو قرآن مجيد في لوح محفوظ. صدق الله العلي العظيم وصلى الله على محمد وآل الطاهرين. In the name of God, the Compassionate, the Merciful. By the heavens full of constellations, by the day promised, by the witness and the witnessed, that self-destroyed were the fellows of the ditch, of the fire with fuel. When facing it, they say, while they witnessed what they did unto the believers, they tormented them for naught but that they believed in God, the ever-prevalent, the most praised. He unto whom belongeth the kingdom of the heavens and the earth, and God is over all things a witness. Verily those who persecute the believers, men and women, and yet they repent not, for them shall be the chastisement of the hell, and for them is a burning torture. Verily those who believe and do deeds of righteousness, for them shall be the gardens which flow rivers, that shall be the greatest achievement. Verily the grip of thy Lord is terrible. Verily he is he who originateth everything and causeth it to return. He is the oft forgiver, the most loving one, Lord of the glorious throne, the mighty doer of whatsoever he wishes. Has not come unto thee the story of the hosts, of Pharaoh and Thamud? Nay, those who believe are used to belie, while God is the encompassing one over them. Nay, it is a Qur'an, the glorious, inscribed and a tablet preserved. صدق الله العلي العظيم وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين.
Thank you, Brother Azhar. It is now my honor to introduce to you all the spiritual leader of the Islamic Center of America's Young Muslim Association, our dear Imam Samahat Sayyid Hassan al-Qazwini, to welcome the debaters and welcome our guests. بعد الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. And thereafter, our moderator for the debate will be coming forward, introducing himself and guiding us through the night. Thank you.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, my dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Does God not exist? What a loving, patient, tolerant God we have, who would even allow us to have such discussion over His existence. Not only that, God in the Holy Quran instructs His Prophet to be nice with those who deny His existence. And Allah says in the Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, ادعو إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة وجادلهم بالتي هي أحسن. Invite to the path of your Lord with wisdom and nice preaching, and argue with them in that which is best. So Allah does even promote this, because once we believe in God, we believe in our intellectual ability to prove His existence. And therefore, believers in God do not shy away from any intellectual debate in order to prove His existence. Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam was asked by a fellow Muslim, ثعلب اليماني, قال يا أمير المؤمنين هل رأيت ربك? Have you seen your Lord? قال وكيف أعبد ربا لم أره? How can I worship a Lord whom I have not seen? قال أورأيته بالعين? Have you seen Him with your own eyes? قال لا. No, I have not seen Him with my eyes. ما رأته العيون بمشاهدة العيان ولكن رأته القلوب بحقائق الإيمان. Eyes do not see Him, but it is hearts that see Him. We have sight and we have insight. With our sight, I can see you, and I can see every other materialistic object. But with my eyes, my insight, I can see Allah, and I can see His creation. And I can see Him through His creation. For there is a hadith says, الطريق إلى الله بعدد أنفاس الخلائق. The path, or the paths to Allah, is as numerous as the breath of the creation. With this, I would like to welcome you all, my dear brothers and sisters, and also I would like to welcome our respected guests, our brother Haj Hassanain Rajab Ali, Mr. Michael Curry, and Mr. Dan Barker, and Mr. Richard Courier. I hope, inshallah, we will have a very successful debate, a totally non-violent and peaceful one. May Allah bless you all. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, in the name of God, the most beneficent, the most merciful. Respected speakers, fellow guests, brothers and sisters in Islam, I begin with the Islamic greeting meaning peace be upon you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Riaz Datu, and it is indeed a pleasure to have been given the opportunity to moderate today's debate on a topic that has been debated for many centuries, and a topic that will be debated for many centuries to come. Does God not exist? Just to provide you with a quick stat, I've been told that we have 1,000 people here today in participation of this debate. We have people from all across North America. We even have people from international locations such as the United Kingdom and East Africa who are in America either on business or pleasure and made the trip down to Dearborn, Michigan to participate. To all of you, I say welcome and thank you for being here. The word debate, as defined in the Fitzhenry and Whiteside's Academic Dictionary, is a discussion of any question, to deliberate and to ponder. And that's exactly what we are here to do today. After all, it is through questioning, discussing, and considering different viewpoints that one's beliefs are corrected or confirmed, helping them move closer to the truth. Therefore, let me thank the four of you in particular for being here and for offering up your time to engage in a healthy discourse and stimulate our minds to help us better understand the truth. As the moderator this afternoon, my role is literally to take a step back, remain impartial, and ensure the debate is conducted fairly for both sides. Having said that, I'll lay out the ground rules and ask all of you, as well as our debaters, to respect these rules and abide by them throughout the afternoon. First and foremost, neither party is here to convert anyone. We're here to discuss, and therefore no personal insults will be accepted. Additionally, given the fact that belief in God is a sensitive chord attached to the hearts of many here, I ask that there not be any ridiculing of God. To be clear, an academic argument to prove your point is absolutely fine, but all I'm asking is not to ridicule. And you're all professionals, so I don't anticipate there will be a problem in this area. Finally, the time that you are allocated for each of your presentations will be strictly adhered to. The first time I ring the bell, it means you have 1 minute left to finish your thought. Do that and take your seat. If you go on for a full minute, I shall ring the bell again, at which point you must stop, even if you're in the middle of your sentence, and sit down. My advice is end as soon as you hear the first bell to avoid being cut off by the second bell. And we begin with the opening statements by each of the four debaters. Each debater will be given 15 minutes for an opening statement. After an hour, we will have a short break. When we return, we will begin the rebuttals, for which each speaker will be given 10 minutes. That will be followed by a cross-examination, 30 minutes of Q&A, and finally closing statements by the debaters. I will explain the process of the cross-examination as well as the question and answer session at the appropriate time. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you each of the debaters whom we've gathered to listen to today. Hassanein Rajab is the principal of the Tawheed Institute of New York. Hassanein came to settle in the United States of America in 1975, emigrating from Tanzania, East Africa. He is a popular speaker locally and has traveled worldwide to lecture on Islam. He is also a frequent lecturer on Islam at various universities in the USA and abroad. He has a master's degree in microbiology from the University of Colorado, and presently he owns and runs an internet company called NetSite Corporation, which specializes in e-commerce and e-business. Hassanein entered the debating circle last year when he debated Dan Barker. Michael Corey is a graduate of Claremont Graduate University and the Union Institute. He has spent the last decade traveling the world and lecturing on the various issues pertaining to science and religion, and is the author of several books on the subject, including The God Hypothesis, God and the New Cosmology and Evolution, and The Problem of Natural Evil. Michael has also debated several atheists and has participated in several radio shows on this subject. He lives in West Virginia. Dan Barker is a former evangelical Christian minister who preached for 19 years before giving up his faith in Jesus and belief in God. He received a degree in religion from Azusa Pacific University, was ordained to the ministry, and served as an associate pastor in 3 California churches. He served a total of 2 years as a missionary in Mexico and 8 years as a cross-country evangelist. In 1983, Dan, you look a lot younger than you really are. In 1983, following 4 to 5 years of deep conversion thinking, Dan became an atheist. He now works as Public Relations Director for the National Freedom from Religion Foundation in Madison, Wisconsin. Dan is a veteran debater on the subject of the non-existence of God. Richard Carrier has a Master of Arts and a Master of Philosophy in Ancient History from Columbia University, where he also used to be a graduate student instructor. Carrier has undertaken extensive study on philosophy and world religions and turned an atheist at the age of 21. Presently, he spends most of his time on writing his dissertations. He has also written several essays on the subject of free thought and non-existence of God. Most recently, he wrote the review of the Rajab Ali Barker debate, which took place last year in New York. Carrier is married and reads 5 languages. Thank you to each one of you for being here today. We now begin with the opening statements, and to start off, I would like to call Hassanein Rajab Ali to the podium for his 15-minute address.
I begin in the name of God, the Beneficent, the Merciful, the Creator of the universe, who is absolute, perfect. He is all-powerful, all-wise, all-just, the Eternal, the Sublime, the Originator, the Magnificent, the Majestic. He is all good. And all the treasures of the universe belongs to Him and Him alone. He does not beget, nor is He begotten. Time, matter, and space all originate from His creation, and they are sustained by His will. Everything He creates is a transient existence in the life, and He is not bound in them, i.e., time, matter, nor space. No creation can share His dominion of absoluteness. All transient creations are inherently in need of Him for continued existence along with sustenance. He creates and makes it complete. He makes it complete, and then He guides it to its intended goal. Nothing can exist without His authority. He is the cause of all causes, and all that exists is because of His will, and He is needless of any of them. The principle of causality, which is inherently present in the intelligent beings, such as humans, fundamentally declares the truth that all transient effects are in need of a primary cause, which itself must be free of need. The notion of an eternity of causes and effects without a primary cause is essentially absurd, because the collective nature of all those that are in need are always in need, and therefore none of them can come into existence. Meaning that when we have an eternity of causes and effects, the effect is in need of a cause, and therefore it can never start. Let me give an example. Imagine in a military, you have soldiers, and each soldier says, in an infinite pattern, saying, looking to the person next to him, says, I will not start unless you start. And if no one starts as the original cause, you will never have an attack. So the army of soldiers is one example where an infinite cause and effect system simply does not exist, because whatever cause is, therefore, is the effect, and the effect is in need of the cause, and since it is in need of the cause, it can never cause. Science is dependent on the principles of causality, rationally speaking, but that is rational knowledge, and we will discuss that further. As a Muslim, having stated what I have stated now, the axis of the religion of Islam is the uniqueness, the oneness of the Almighty God, who is independent And all that exists is due to his infinite mercy, meaning my existence, and the existence of the universe, is as a result of his infinite mercy, which is what we understand, for example, his all goodness. Fundamental in this debate with relations to God is the human being's existence. Since we as human beings are the ones discussing the possibilities about God, it is therefore self-evident that we are endowed with intelligence and free will to use our minds and observations to ascertain the truth of any issue. As a believer in Islam, this truth is further clarified and solidified with the understanding that we have been created for a genuine purpose and therefore a genuine goal, which is to be the recipient of the infinite treasures of God, while at the same time, while we are receiving this infinite treasure, there is the elevating of the individual being receiving it through this process of self-introspection and a system of trials. I'll give you an example of how we validate such an escalation of an individual through a system of trials. Let me give you a brief example, and I will elucidate further on it in the subsequent discussion within my time span. If you look at two people who've got $100 million, both of them are rich with the same amount of money. They are both equal in their wealth. One has received his wealth through inheritance. The other was poor and he became a millionaire. Which one would you honor more as a valid individual being who has greater substantive presence? It is the one who is the latter, logically speaking, because that is rational. Why? Because he was poor, he struggled, he suffered, and therefore he became wealthy. He was just not given this wealth freely, but rather he suffered and struggled through the achievement. Therefore, not only did he gain the wealth, but also he gained his own self-preservation and self-escalation of an individual being, which is the ultimate goal of the human being according to the Islamic perspective. Meaning, to give humans paradise directly without putting a trial to them is certainly a possibility with God, but that would belittle the individual who receives it. It is like a child who's been raised with a golden spoon. As a believer in Islam, I say that this is fundamental and rational knowledge, which is what we understand of what is right and what is wrong. Such truth and false, greater and lesser, we have, for example, common rational understandings as such, are all intrinsically built into us while before we are born, after we are born, we have it in our system. It is not empirically absorbed. Rather, the empirical observations are a complement to this inborn rational knowledge. All human beings, regardless of what position they hold about their beliefs, possess this knowledge. This intelligence is further enhanced with the endowment of the five senses to capture external surroundings for greater understandings of the purpose of life. Added to these are powers of desire, anger, imaginations, which enable us to proactively participate consciously in our environment socially with the inescapable, inherent realization of a need for morality and goodness. This realization, is evident in all human beings. As a consequence of this reality, we note that it is self-evident that human beings function under the system of trials with principles whereby we examine ourselves and our fellow creations by applying the principles of what is moral and what is not on our affairs as well as our relationships across the entire existence. We judge, we reward, we punish, or we abstain from such actions based on how this trial is perceived and concluded upon. This consequence of how we act is the result of holding ourselves accountable for our beliefs and actions. I underline the term accountability here because that is going to be one angle that I will pursue. The collective purpose of all these individual trials is to achieve the divine trial of submitting to the truth for the life of the hereafter. The hereafter is rationally necessary because otherwise trials with principles is simply absurd. Having a set of transient trials, applying principles upon it without fruition to take it complete is just an absurd cyclical activity with no end in sight. But to have the belief in the life hereafter, it concludes the entire circle and brings everything into perfect vision. So that which we see in this difficult trial sometimes may seem to be incomplete, but the completion is done with the belief in the hereafter. To be good, for example, is a just system. We follow justice in this life, which is, if you understand in this life, justice is never complete in this world. Humans don't necessarily get their due justice. There are people who commit crimes and they die. The genocidal murderers, like tyrants who come in who kill an entire population and then they get away with it and never get due justice. What happens to them? Where is their accountability? And if a human being can hinge on the notion that you can get away with it because we're just some accident existing in this world, then the entire moral system collapses and my entire social system and my justice system holds no water. People always demand justice, yet they don't all get it. Tyrants who kill, as I mentioned, is one classic example. Since this world does not provide it completely, there is some level of justice, but it is not complete, then the hereafter is a must. To negate this by saying it is not necessary, then the one who negates becomes a dangerous proponent of injustice, which is therefore lacking in goodness and therefore evil. The transient life demands an objective existence where free will coupled with intelligence can achieve its potentials through a relative frame of reference. Thus, the necessity of the thesis and the antithesis must coexist for the individual to be tried under the driving force of this system is the truth, and the antithesis, therefore, is the false. Another element of this is the good and the antithesis, which is evil. When we speak of truth, we say false. The another antithesis is the good and the evil. Evil is always lack of good, and therefore always dependent on good. Conversely, good is not dependent on evil. The intelligent being nonetheless is dependent under a trial system to have evil as an effect of the lack of good to understand and appreciate the good. Similarly, the truth is not dependent on the false. But the lack of truth is essential for the transient intelligent. Falsifiability, for example, which is being used often by those who try to present it to those who believe in God. Sir Karl Popper, who brought this notion of falsifiability, somehow or other, because the empiricist wants to apply this notion of falsifiability to everything in his arguments, has taken an assumption that this litmus test is applicable everywhere. It's not. How do you falsify the following? The whole is always greater than the part. How would you falsify that? And there are many such examples. That means falsifiability is not an entity that can be applied everywhere, and I will discuss that in my rebuttals if I get a chance. Certain truths can be ascertained directly through rational knowledge without false. For example, what I just mentioned. For example, the necessity for this trial to exist, that we all exist under constantly, you need to have evil and good. A teacher giving an exam, the exam can be perfect, but within this exam is evil, because the wrong answers are evil. When a student chooses the wrong answer, he gets punished. When a student chooses the right answer, he gets rewarded. But the exam is perfect. Because to remove the evil out of this system would imply the exam is imperfect. So the trial that we live under is a perfect system, and having the evil coexist with us is part of the perfect design. One might say that how about God interceding? Well, how about the teacher seeing that student putting the wrong answer? Should the teacher jump in and stop the student from putting the wrong answer? One might say, but that's goodness. No, it's not goodness. That's ignorance. That is lack of goodness. That is foolishness, because it negates the purpose of the exam. Though the teacher knows that the student is putting the wrong answer, and knows that the student will not get a good career because of that. Well, would you dismantle the entire system of education in order to fulfill something which is so haphazardly thought of? Not acceptable. In conclusion, I say my time is up. God does not need to be seen directly. There are many elements of our lives that are seen indirectly. One classic example is love. Love has never been seen, has never been touched, has never been felt. It has always been understood indirectly, yet no one denies the existence of love. Thank you very much.
I'd now like to call upon Michael Corey. You now have 15 minutes.
Greetings. It is my great pleasure to be here with you today, and it is such an honor and a privilege to follow Hassanein Rajabali in this debate. I am very much touched by the words that he has spoken. I was touched last night by everything you said personally, and I feel I am with the most wonderful group of people I have ever been around. And that is one indication of morality that Immanuel Kant, the philosopher, once pointed out, that if you can take an individual behavior and generalize it into something that everybody would do, and if it turns out to be a good thing, then it's a moral thing. If the peace that we see amongst us today were practiced around the world, there would be no wars and no hate and no killings. That is proof positive by itself that the morality that is practiced here amongst us is the correct one, a good one, one that we cannot live without, at least not safely. And so I stand in tremendous respect and honor of this moral code that is aimed at peace. What more beautiful thing to say when you greet someone than peace be with you? There is nothing higher, and I honor that, and I wish we all could follow that. At any rate, we live at a very fortunate time in history, in human history. We live at the cusp, if you will, the very edge of technology, where science has never been more developed than it is today. We know today things that were impossible to have been known thousands of years ago, at least scientifically speaking. And science is the ethos, if you will, of not only the atheistic community, but also the secular community. We walked on the moon, put a man on the moon through science. We've invented medicines through science. We've done open heart surgery through science. So science is a very respected, God-given study of the natural world. And what is science itself to the believer but that which God has created? And it's a way, if you will, to indirectly worship that which he has done, or the Creator himself, by seeing what he's done, by examining it in detail. And this is a good piece of advice for the students in here in high school, junior high, or college, that if you look at the natural sciences as something created by God himself, and not by the human hand or the human mind, it sets a totally different tone to your study of science. What am I getting at here? We have, for the first time in human history, not just evidence of a creator, and that is a common criticism of the monotheistic point of view, and that is that we have an absence of evidence for the existence of a creator, and that we are blind believers, if you will. And perhaps in the past there might have been some remote degree of truth to that, which I even doubt. Today there is no excuse, because modern science has discovered an amazing plethora of findings, each one of which supports overwhelmingly the existence of our designer. It's so amazing we could be here all day, and I'm going to try to summarize it without leaving out anything really important. It has been believed that the past has been infinite for thousands of years, that there was no beginning. And yet the Quran not only predicted a beginning, as did the Bible. Modern science was opposed to the idea of a beginning for thousands of years. And even Albert Einstein himself, when he discovered his relativity theories, and he saw that the universe was expanding from his relativity theories, yet he looked up at the sky and everything seemed stable. And so he concluded that the universe cannot be expanding, like his equations seem to indicate. So he put a fudge factor in his equations called the cosmological constant to make up for this fact. Yet it is the greatest finding in all of human history, scientifically speaking, that the universe is expanding. The universe we live in is expanding like a balloon that you're blowing up. And the Quran predicted this over 1,000 years ago, that the universe we live in is expanding. The Quran predicted this. This is an amazing thing, that even the day before, if you could predict tomorrow's scientific discovery that goes against all belief leading up to it, that would be a tremendous accomplishment. But 1,600 years before, or whatever the specific number is, that's an amazing accomplishment. But so right there alone is a further reason to say, hey, there's something going on here. This man named Muhammad that wrote this book named the Quran knew something we don't, and had access to a source of knowledge that we just recently came into, 1929, when it was discovered formally that the universe is expanding. And now this is a consensus position amongst all of the scientists of the world. Every self-respecting physicist and cosmologist believes that the universe is expanding. And what is the significance of this fact? Well, there are several. First of all, if the universe is expanding like a balloon, you can roll the equations back, so to speak, in time and see that in the past the universe had to have been smaller and smaller until you go back all the way that it's possible to go. And if you take it all the way back, you get something called a singularity. It's a particle, if you will, that is infinitely small, infinitely dense, and infinitely hot. This is something that has been confirmed by modern science to an accuracy of approximately 8 decimal points. So there is no question that the universe began, and that it began with a singularity. But the significant finding here, in addition to this, was made by the physicist in the wheelchair, Stephen Hawking, and also Roger Penrose, both from England. Their principle is called the space-time theorem of general relativity. And what does it tell us? Through math, and math that has been confirmed again to 8 decimal points, so there's no question about the math here, that space, time, and matter all began at the Big Bang, and there was nothing before it. Creation ex nihilo, out of nothing. This has been a basic tenet of our belief for thousands of years, and now modern science has stumbled upon the same fact. Creation out of nothing. And the mathematical equations prove that time had to have had a beginning at the Big Bang, as did matter, as did that matter cannot be eternal, and the universe cannot be eternal. And a simple thought experiment can prove that. There could not have been an infinity of moments prior to the present moment. In other words, the past could not have been infinite. Otherwise, we would have never gotten here, and we would not be here today. And therefore, there had to have been a beginning. And that alone is an astonishing realization that further supports our faith. But when you look deeper, the miracles keep coming out at you. So what would we expect if the universe that we live in was in fact designed by an infinitely intelligent power? What would we expect? We would expect to see evidence of that throughout the creation, mathematically and otherwise. And in fact, this is what we observe. And it's an astonishing hypothesis, to be sure. First of all, there were absolutely no mistakes whatsoever on the way to the present day. From the very beginning of the universe, some 15 billion years ago, and remember, God is outside of time, so it's not like he had to wait 15 billion years for us to meet today. For him, there was no time at all. It was instantaneous. This is a wonderful thing by itself. But there are many other implications that emanate from this. Namely, the number one criticism that's been directed towards the monotheistic point of view has been that science is no longer, religion is no longer necessary, particularly monotheistic religions are no longer necessary to explain the universe because the universe is self-organizing, meaning that the atoms and molecules in it build themselves on their own according to the laws of nature that, of course, God himself created. But from an atheistic point of view, these laws are taken as axiomatic. They begin with those laws. And sure, if you begin with an axiomatic set of laws that lead naturally to life, then there would appear to be no need for a creator. But that position is destroyed by the fact that it's question-begging. It begs the question, where did these natural laws come from? And the only place they could conceivably have come from is the hand of God himself. How can I demonstrate this to you? The only way that atheistic or non-theistic scientists have been able to propose that complex life forms could have come into being is through a process called natural selection, that you have self-reproducing beings, and the fittest of those survive, and they leave behind the less fit, and so on, and hence comes complexity slowly over a number of years. Well, the amazing, miraculous discovery of Mr. Hawking, Dr. Hawking, and Dr. Penrose, is that the laws of nature did not evolve by natural selection. They did not. They popped into being instantly after the Big Bang, like a number of 10 to the minus 43rd seconds after the Big Bang, which is called Planck's wall, because earlier than that point, our equations cannot go because it's getting too close to the Creator, and we are forbidden from getting right on top of him, not just in our minds and spiritually, but also mathematically. It is impossible to go back to the exact moment of the creation. Planck's wall stops us. Our equations stop there. But the universe itself began there. And soon thereafter, when I say soon, I mean a split second, all of the laws of nature popped into being perfect, perfectly fine-tuned in a just right Goldilocks manner to support the existence of life. That's where I get the theme for my latest book, The God Hypothesis. This is Goldilocks on the cover. And the subtitle basically gives away my train of thought, Discovering Design in Our Just Right Goldilocks Universe. The amazing discovery that has been put before us is the following, that not only did all of these constants of nature, like, for instance, gravity, the strength of gravity, the speed at which this falls, it could have been different, right? It didn't have to be 9.8 meters a second on the Earth. It could have been different. In the same way, the electrical constant and all the various constants, there's like 24 of them, the strong nuclear force, the strength of the weak nuclear force, all of these constants could have been altered, could have been different. And had any one of them been different, we would not be here today talking about any of this. This is the amazing finding of secular science, the science that has been used against theism, that our universe is that fine-tuned, that there's no room for error at all. And Einstein himself recognized that there is no room for error at all. And a lot of people think, and I was asked a very intelligent question by a very intelligent sister yesterday, which is, why couldn't this have happened naturally? Why couldn't this have happened by chance? And the reason it couldn't have happened by chance is that chance events do not result in this sort of complexity. There is not one object any one of us can point to, and we can say, well, chance produced this item. The item that is normally used is that of a watch, right? If you came upon a watch, would you believe that this watch had put itself together by chance over millions of years? Of course you wouldn't. Even trillions of years. The fact that there are cogs and wheels inside that all work together, it is evidence of a designer, a watchmaker, if you will. Well, it has previously been believed that this theory has been destroyed by Darwin's discovery of natural selection. That natural selection can slowly build these parts over billions of years. And so it can happen naturally. The flaw there, and this is a tremendous flaw, is that the laws of nature are not subject to natural selection. They came perfect out of the Big Bang without any fine-tuning at all. They didn't have billions of years to slowly take on their life-supporting format. They instantly were life-supporting from the very beginning. And the only way you can make sense of that is that there was a creator prior to the Big Bang who fine-tuned all of the laws with life in mind several billion years later. And that's exactly what we find, a universe with no flaws at all. And what we think are flaws are just flaws in our own thinking. We don't see the bigger picture. It's like looking at the Mona Lisa and zooming in on a dark spot of the Mona Lisa and saying, this is a flawed picture. Look, it's got black in it. But when you zoom out and see the whole context, you see that this darkness is an important part of the actual painting. It's the same thing with evil. And with all of the apparent deficiencies of our world, there is not one deficiency in the structure of the world. I like that ending. I'll take that.